This is a story about two women, Lulu and Eva. They came to this country when Eva was 2 years old. Or was it 4? Anyway, they came to America from Lebanon. Or was it Syria? Okay, I guess this is less a story about these two women and more a story about my family trying to figure out what happened to these two women. Eva was born in 1908 and told her daughter, my mother, that she came to America when she was 2 years old. She said she came over from Lebanon with her mother and that they came through Ellis Island, a hub for immigration at the time. Years after Eva's passing, I thought it would be nice to find out exactly when Lulu and Eva came through Ellis Island. Then I could get a picture of the ship they sailed on for my mother. If Eva came through Ellis Island when she was 2 years old, that would have been 1910. So I scoured the ship's manifests, that look like this, to find a 2-year-old that came over from Lebanon in 1910. Seems easy, right? Not so much. The problem is that Lulu didn't speak much English, and most of the people working at Ellis Island at the time only spoke English. So if I told you that my great-grandmother's full name was Lulu Abu Nadir, how would you spell it? Probably not like it's actually spelled. Also, look at this manifest. What if you had to digitize this? How would you transpose it? It would be a nightmare trying to decipher this writing, especially on a large scale. But back to the search. I was scouring manifests from 1910 and finding nothing. Absolutely nothing. It wasn't until a few clues turned up that we started making some progress. The first clue came when one of my great-uncles passed away, and the family was sent many of his belongings. In his collection of family photos was this newspaper article. The battery lasting 8 years is not what was important. In the article, it states that Lulu came to Arizona 2 months after statehood in 1912. We had been looking in the wrong year for the manifests. That would explain a lot. Was Eva wrong about when she came to the U.S.? Yes, she was 4 years old, not 2. With this new information, I began to look again, this time in the correct year, but was still having trouble finding a 4-year-old that came from Lebanon in 1912. Then another member of the family gave this interesting piece of the puzzle. My family is not, in fact, Lebanese, but Syrian. Why did we think otherwise? Well, there was a lot of unrest in Syria over the years, and the American perception of that unrest was rarely positive. At some point, Lulu decided that we should start calling ourselves Lebanese to avoid harsh judgments from others. Even with this new information, the search was still difficult. I still could not find anyone matching the information I had about my grandmother and great-grandmother. It wasn't until Thanksgiving one year that my dear great-aunt Ruth put everything into perspective for us. She was an odd little woman who had many specific rules she lived by, and sometimes expected others to live by them as well. She would scold you if you went outside without a jacket on, and she was born and raised in Arizona. She would never open her eyes when pictures were taken of her because she thought the flash would make her go blind. She also only ate at certain times of the day, without exception. So when we sat down for Thanksgiving dinner that year around 6 p.m., she sat in the living room and watched TV. As we ate and talked, she watched and watched until a movie trailer came on the TV. All of us sitting at the table fell silent and turned to her when she said, "Oh, we were supposed to be on that boat." As casual as if she just remembered where she left her keys. You've probably guessed by now, but the trailer she was watching was for the movie Titanic. We all, of course, pressed her for more information and found that Lulu and Eva were supposed to get on the Titanic to come to America. However, Lulu was famously impatient, and when they arrived, the ship wasn't going to leave for 2 more days. There was a ship leaving that day from a nearby port, and Lulu went and booked passage on that boat instead. We also learned a very important detail in our search. Eva's name was not Eva. Her real name was Haifa. She never told my mother that important piece of information. Well, after these major revelations, pieces started falling into place. We knew when the Titanic was supposed to leave, so we could figure out when the boat they were on supposed to leave. This narrowed the search from hundreds of pages of manifest to maybe a dozen. We searched and finally found them here. Yes, that is the same image you've been looking at all this time. I stared at it multiple times before it all came together. You see, when Lulu told the people at Ellis Island that her name was Lulu, they heard Lulu. When she said Abu Nadir, they heard Bu Nadir. When someone went to digitize all this information, they entered her name as Lonlo, because the writing on this manifest is so hard to read. But we had found her, right here. They sailed to America on the SS La Bretagne 2 days before the Titanic left port. The La Bretagne is famous for being the ship that sent the warning to the Titanic about the icebergs, a warning that was ignored. So this woman brought an infant across the sea to America on this boat. My mother now has this picture in her home. And because Lulu didn't want to wait, she saved our family in the process. I guess sometimes impatience is a virtue.